They declared humanity dead, but Earth returned in a blaze of fire. The news spread across Coalition space like wildfire. Humanity had defeated the first attacks effortlessly, and now they waited for the Council's decision with a patience that felt more threatening than any weapon. On 1,000 worlds, civilians watched the broadcasts and wondered what would happen next. Some species saw opportunity in the chaos. Pirates raided trade routes while the military was distracted. Separatist movements that had been quiet for generations suddenly found their voice again. The carefully maintained order of the Galactic Coalition began to crack at the edges. But the greatest threat was gathering in the shadows, far from Coalition censors. Ambassador Velthar had not been idle during his escape. Years of planning, decades of building secret alliances, all came together in this moment. He stood on the bridge of his command dreadnought and surveyed his assembled fleet with satisfaction. Thousands of ships had answered his call. Extremist factions from dozens of species, all united by fear of what humanity represented. They were fanatics, zealots who saw compromise as weakness and believed that the only way to preserve the galactic order was to eliminate the human threat completely. They believe their home is safe, Velthar said to his second-in-command. They have shown us their expeditionary fleet, thinking it would intimidate us, but they have revealed their weakness, their emotional attachment to their birth world. If we destroy Earth itself, humanity will collapse from the shock. His tactical officer, a veteran of countless campaigns, looked uncertain. But General, the intelligence reports suggest Earth's defenses are formidable. We do not know what we will face there. They cannot defend against everything, Velthar snapped. We have planet cracker weapons designed to shatter worlds. Even if Earth has defenses, they cannot protect against a weapon that strikes from slipspace itself. We will emerge, fire, and retreat before they can respond. Earth will be destroyed and humanity will be broken. The fleet prepared for the jump to Sol system. Engineers checked the planet cracker weapons, massive devices that could trigger seismic destruction on a planetary scale. These weapons had been banned by the Coalition centuries ago, too terrible to be used even in the worst wars. But desperate times called for desperate measures. At Astral Prime, High Chancellor Morotan received intelligence reports of the gathering fleet with growing horror. We must warn the humans, he said to his advisors. Whatever our disagreements, this is madness. Velthar plans genocide, but his warnings came too late. Velthar's fleet jumped to slipspace, racing toward Earth faster than any message could travel. The die was cast. In Sol system, General Tajin sat in the command center buried deep beneath the surface of Earth. He was an old soldier, one of the few who remembered the days before the blockade. 200 years of genetic enhancement and medical technology had kept him alive, and he had spent every one of those years preparing for this exact moment. General, we are detecting a massive slipspace disturbance, his sensor officer reported. Multiple contacts. Estimate 5,000 vessels. They are coming in fast and hostile. Tajin allowed himself a thin smile. So they finally came, just as we knew they would. Sound the alert. Battle stations across the entire system. It is time to show the galaxy what 200 years of preparation looks like. Alarms sounded across Earth, on Mars, in the asteroid belt, and on every moon and orbital platform throughout the system. Civilians had drilled for this day countless times. They moved to shelters with practiced efficiency, while soldiers took their positions. Velthar's fleet emerged from slipspace at the edge of the system, weapons charging and shields at maximum power. They expected resistance, but they were prepared to fight through whatever defenses Earth could muster. What they found waiting for them was beyond their worst nightmares. The entire Sol system had been turned into a fortress. Every asteroid in the belt had been hollowed out and converted into weapon platforms. The moon bristled with railguns that could throw projectiles at a significant fraction of light speed. Mars held atmospheric processors that doubled as planetary defense batteries, and throughout the system, millions of automated defense drones waited in patient silence. This is impossible, Velthar's tactical officer whispered as his sensors painted the full picture. There are more weapons in this system than in the entire Coalition military combined. But Velthar had committed too far to turn back now. Forward! Target Earth directly! Fire the planet crackers as soon as we are in range. The largest space battle in galactic history began. Velthar's fleet charged toward Earth, their weapons firing continuously at the defender positions. Human ships emerged from hiding spots throughout the system, striking at the flanks of the invasion force. The void erupted in fire and fury on a scale never before witnessed. Captain Minho led his fighter squadron in desperate combat, his enhanced reflexes and AI assistance pushed to their absolute limits. Enemy ships outnumbered the defenders significantly, but the humans had advantages that numbers could not overcome. Every drone operated with perfect coordination. Every defense platform fired with computer-precise accuracy, and the human pilots themselves fought with the fury of a species protecting their home. Engineer Sora watched from the Lunar Command Center as her weapons systems came online, one by one. She had designed many of the defenses personally, pouring 2 centuries of innovation into making Earth invulnerable. Now her creations would be tested in fire. Activate the lunar accelerators, she ordered. Full power to all batteries. Let them see what we built while they thought we were dying. The moon's surface erupted as massive railguns fired in sequence, hurling projectiles the size of buildings into the enemy fleet at velocities that made them hit like nuclear weapons. Entire enemy capital ships vaporized from single impacts, but Velthar's fleet pressed forward, absorbing losses that would have broken any rational force. They were fanatics, and they had come to destroy Earth or die trying. Slowly, inevitably, they fought their way closer to humanity's homeworld. Planet crackers are charging, Velthar roared in triumph as his dreadnought reached optimal firing position. In moments, Earth dies and humanity's spirit dies with it. The weapon powered up, drawing energy from the ship's entire power grid. It would fire through slipspace itself, the projectile emerging inside Earth's mantle to trigger catastrophic seismic destruction. Nothing could stop it now. Commander G1 saw the weapon preparing to fire from her position in her assault ship. She had been part of a strike team trying to disable Velthar's flagship, but they had been too slow. The planet cracker would fire in seconds. Without hesitation, she made her choice. All crew abandon ship, she ordered calmly. Eject now. That is an order. Commander, what are you doing? Her co-pilot demanded. Jiwan's enhanced reflexes moved faster than any organic being could follow. She sealed the bridge, ejected her crew in their escape pods, and pushed her ship's engines to maximum power. What I was born to do. Protect Earth. Her ship accelerated directly toward Velthar's dreadnought, moving faster than any pursuing fire could track. As the planet cracker fired, G1's ship struck the weapon's focusing array at the exact moment of discharge. The resulting explosion was visible across the entire system. The planet cracker's energy, redirected by the impact, tore open a rift into slipspace. Velthar's entire command section, along with dozens of surrounding ships, was pulled into the tear before it collapsed. In that moment, Velthar realized his mistake. He had thought Earth was just another world, that humans were just another species. He had not understood that humanity had spent 200 years forging themselves into something harder than any material in the galaxy. Not conquerors, but survivors who would burn themselves to ash before letting their home fall. The slipspace rift consumed him and his dreams of genocide together. With their leader gone, and Earth still intact, the morale of the remaining invasion fleet shattered. Ships began to surrender or flee, their fanatic courage broken by the reality of facing an enemy that would not yield. General Tajin watched from his command center as the battle wound down. The cost had been high. Thousands of defense platforms destroyed, hundreds of human ships damaged or lost, and one brave commander who gave everything to protect her home. But Earth stood. The fires of war had tested humanity once again, and they had not broken. As repair crews began their work and the system slowly returned to battle-ready status, a single transmission went out from Earth to Astral Prime. It was Admiral Hyun's voice, but it carried the weight of an entire species behind it. The galaxy came to our home seeking our destruction. Earth remains. Now the question is simple. Will the coalition choose peace? Or must we continue this war until only one side remains? The choice has always been yours. But understand that humanity will never stop fighting for our right to exist. Never. In the Galactic Council chamber, High Chancellor Morotan listened to those words and knew that the old galaxy was truly dead. What came next would be different, built on the ashes of the old order. The only question remaining was whether the transition would happen through wisdom or through more bloodshed. They declared humanity dead, but Earth returned in a blaze of fire. The Great Hall of Astral Prime Station floated in the void between stars, a monument to galactic cooperation. Inside, representatives from hundreds of worlds gathered in a circular chamber so vast that the far walls disappeared into shadow. Today they met to discuss a matter that had lingered for 2 centuries, like an old wound that refused to heal. Ambassador Velthar stood at the center podium, his reptilian scales catching the light from 1,000 floating orbs. His 3 eyes swept across the assembled crowd with satisfaction. This was his moment, the culmination of years of political maneuvering. Honored members of the Galactic Coalition, his voice echoed through translation devices in 100 different languages. We gather today to address the question of the Sol system and its former inhabitants, the humans. For 200 standard years, their system has remained silent. No transmissions, no ships, no signs of life whatsoever. High Chancellor Morotan shifted on his elevated platform, his 6 arms folded in a gesture of deep contemplation. The insectoid leader had served for 3 decades, but he remembered the human question from his earliest days in office. It had always troubled him, though he had never spoken of it publicly. Velthar continued, his voice growing stronger. When humanity refused our rightful authority, when they rejected the Coalition's wisdom and continued their dangerous experiments with artificial intelligence, we had no choice but to act. The blockade was necessary. We all agreed on this. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Some species nodded their agreement. Others remained silent, their expressions unreadable. The evidence is clear, Velthar said, activating a holographic display above the podium. 2 centuries ago, our long-range sensors detected a massive energy surge from the 3rd planet of the Sol system. The readings were consistent with a catastrophic technological failure. Since that day, nothing. Complete silence. Honored Chancellor, members of the Council, I propose we officially declare humanity extinct and open their former territory for colonization. The resources of that system should not go to waste. The chamber erupted in debate. Some species shouted their support, seeing opportunity in the empty solar system. Others argued for caution, remembering humanity's stubborn nature and rapid technological growth before the blockade. High Chancellor Morotan raised his primary arms, calling for silence. The chamber slowly quieted. This is not a decision to be made lightly. Humanity was young, yes, and reckless in their pursuit of progress. But they were also innovative and resilient. Are we certain they are truly gone? Velthar's scales rippled with barely contained irritation. With respect, Chancellor, what more evidence do we need? 200 years of silence speaks louder than any words. If they had survived, surely we would have detected something. No species can survive complete isolation for so long, especially not one as dependent on expansion as humanity was. There was a signal. A small voice spoke from the lower tiers. A junior communications officer, barely old enough to attend council sessions, stood nervously. 3 weeks ago, we detected a distress beacon at the edge of Sector 7. The signature was human. The chamber fell silent. Every eye turned to the young officer. Why were we not informed of this? Morotan's voice carried an edge of anger rarely heard from the normally calm Chancellor. The signal was weak and fragmented, the officer explained, shrinking under the weight of so many stares. It identified itself as Commander G1 of the Terran Exploratory Service. But we could not verify the authenticity. The transmission was voice only, no visual. Many in the communications department believed it was a hoax or perhaps an old recording, a ghost signal from before the blockade. Velthar laughed, a harsh sound that echoed unpleasantly through the chamber. 1 signal in 200 years? If anything, this proves my point. Perhaps 1 survivor drifts in the dark, the last remnant of a dead civilization. It changes nothing. But High Chancellor Morotan was not convinced. Something about this entire situation had always bothered him. A feeling he could not quite name. The humans had been fierce and proud when they rejected the Coalition's ultimatum. They had looked the entire galactic community in the eye and said no. Such a species did not simply vanish without a trace. Nevertheless, Morotan said carefully, I propose we postpone this vote until we can investigate the signal further. If there is even 1 human survivor, we owe it to ourselves to understand what happened in that system. Velthar's eyes narrowed. He had worked too hard to let this opportunity slip away. Honored Chancellor, with the greatest respect, we cannot delay progress based on sentiment. The vote should proceed. After hours of debate, the council finally agreed. The vote was called. Species after species cast their decision into the holographic record. When the final tally appeared, the result was clear. Humanity was officially declared extinct. The blockade around Sol system would be lifted, and expeditions would be organized to claim whatever resources remained. Velthar barely concealed his triumph as he left the chamber. Behind him, High Chancellor Morotan sat alone on his platform, staring at the voting record with those old doubts gnawing at his mind. Far below, in the communications center of Astral Prime, alarms suddenly began to scream. Officers rushed to their stations, their faces turning pale as they read the incoming data. "Get me the Chancellor," the senior officer shouted. "Get me the Chancellor now!" On the main display, sensor data painted a picture that should have been impossible. At the very edge of Coalition space, thousands of ships had just emerged from slipspace. The formation was perfect, military precise. The power readings were off the scale, beyond anything in the Coalition's databases, and they were all heading directly toward Astral Prime. The officer's hands shook as he tried to hail the approaching fleet. No response. He tried every frequency, every protocol. Still nothing. The ships just kept coming, maintaining their perfect formation, closing the distance with each passing second. By the time High Chancellor Morotan reached the communications center, half the Coalition defense fleet was scrambling to intercept positions. The Chancellor stared at the display, his 6 arms hanging limp at his sides. "How many ships?" he asked quietly. "We stopped counting at 5,000, Chancellor. They keep coming." "The signature is unknown. We have never seen this technology before." Morotan felt something he had not experienced in decades. Fear. Deep, primal fear that made his chitin itch and his secondary hearts race. Somewhere in the back of his mind a thought formed. A terrible, impossible thought. What if the humans had not destroyed themselves? What if the silence had meant something else entirely? What if, isolated and angry, they had spent 200 years preparing? The unknown fleet was 3 hours away from Astral Prime. The Chancellor gave the order to prepare for possible combat, though part of him suspected that if these newcomers wanted a fight, all the preparation in the galaxy would not be enough. In the empty reaches of space between stars, the fleet continued its inexorable approach. On the bridge of the lead dreadnought, Admiral Hyun sat in his command chair and watched the Coalition station grow larger on his displays. Behind him, his crew worked in efficient silence, the product of generations of training and purpose. "Should we respond to their hails, Admiral?" his communications officer asked. Hyun smiled, though there was no warmth in it. "Not yet. Let them wonder. Let them fear. They declared us dead. Now we show them how the dead can rise." The fleet pressed forward and the galaxy held its breath. They declared humanity dead, but Earth returned in a blaze of fire. The Coalition defense fleet formed up in a desperate line between the unknown armada and Astral Prime. Hundreds of warships from dozens of species took position, their weapons charging and shields at maximum power. It was an impressive display of military might, the accumulated strength of a galactic civilization. Against the approaching fleet, it looked like children's toys facing a storm. Admiral Corvin of the Krindax Navy commanded the defense force from his flagship. He was a veteran of 40 campaigns, a warrior who had never known defeat. But as he watched the sensor readings of the approaching fleet, his hands tightened on his command console until his claws left marks in the metal. "They are still not responding to hails," his communications officer reported. "No identification, no demands, no threats. Just silence. Analysis?" Corvin demanded. His science officer looked up from her station, her face troubled. "Admiral, their technology does not match anything in our databases. The power signatures suggest energy generation far beyond our capabilities. Their weapon systems are active, but I cannot identify what type of weapons they are. And their engines, sir. They are creating micro-wormholes for maneuvering. That should not be possible." Corvin made his decision. "All ships, weapons free. If they cross the marker line, we engage. Send one final hail. If they are hostile, we need to delay them long enough to evacuate the station." The message went out across all frequencies. "Unknown fleet, you are approaching Coalition sovereign space. Identify yourselves immediately or we will consider you hostile. This is your final warning." The answer came not in words but in action. The lead ships of the unknown fleet suddenly accelerated, crossing the marker line in seconds. Their formation never wavered. All ships engage. Corvin roared. The space between the two fleets erupted in fire. Thousands of weapons discharged simultaneously, lighting the void with deadly energy. Coalition missiles and plasma bolts streaked toward their targets, but the unknown ships moved like nothing Corvin had ever seen. They twisted and turned with impossible precision, as if they knew where every shot would be before it was fired. Shields flared, but none broke, and then they returned fire. Coalition ships began to go dark, not destroyed but disabled. Weapons that somehow passed through shields to fry internal systems. Targeted strikes that left crews alive but ships completely powerless. It was surgical, precise, and absolutely terrifying in its efficiency. In 15 minutes, half of Corvin's fleet was drifting dead in space. The other half continued fighting with desperate courage, but the outcome was inevitable. "Admiral," his communications officer shouted over the sounds of alarms. "We are receiving a transmission from the unknown fleet." "Put it through." Corvin snapped even as his own ship shuddered from impacts. The voice that came through the speakers was human. Clear, calm, and carrying the weight of 2 centuries of silence. "Coalition forces, cease fire immediately. We have no desire to kill you, but we will defend ourselves. This is Admiral Hyun of the Terran Expeditionary Fleet. Humans have returned to the galaxy. Stand down." The bridge of Corvin's flagship fell silent. Every officer stared at the speakers as if they had spoken in tongues. "Impossible," Corvin whispered. "They are dead. They have been dead for 200 years. Apparently," Admiral Hyun's voice continued, "reports of our death were greatly exaggerated. I repeat, cease fire. We will disable every ship you send against us, but we would prefer not to. We have come to talk, not to wage war." Corvin looked at his tactical display. 3/4 of his fleet was now disabled. The unknown ships, the human ships, had not destroyed a single coalition vessel. They had the power to wipe out his entire force, but they were showing restraint. "All ships cease fire," Corvin ordered. He felt 100 years old suddenly. "Fall back to defensive positions around the station." On the bridge of the human dreadnought Indomitable, Admiral Hyun allowed himself a small smile. He was a tall man, gray at the temples with eyes that had seen too much. Behind him, his bridge crew continued their work with quiet efficiency. "Status of the coalition fleet?" he asked. "All ships disabled or withdrawn, Admiral," his tactical officer reported. "No fatalities. Medical teams report coalition crews are shaken but unharmed." "Good." Hyun stood and walked to the forward viewport, looking out at the massive station that housed the Galactic Coalition Council. "Dr. Nari, are we ready to broadcast?" A woman in her 50s stepped forward from the science station. Dr. Nari had been one of the lead researchers during Earth's long isolation. She had gray streaks in her black hair and the calm demeanor of someone who had solved impossible problems. "Ready, Admiral. The transmission will reach every coalition system simultaneously. Then let us introduce ourselves properly. Humans have been silent long enough." Dr. Nari activated the communications array, and her face appeared on screens across 1,000 worlds. She spoke in clear, simple language that the translation systems easily handled. "People of the Galactic Coalition, I am Dr. Nari of Earth. 200 years ago, you blockaded our system because you feared our technology. You feared our artificial intelligence, our rapid growth, our refusal to submit to your authority. You thought isolation would destroy us. You were wrong." Images appeared alongside her words. Earth, whole and thriving, massive cities that gleamed with technology, orbital stations that dwarfed anything the Coalition had built, ships being constructed in yards that stretched across the asteroid belt. "When you cut us off from the galaxy, you gave us a gift, though you did not mean to. You gave us time. Time to solve problems you said were impossible. Time to advance beyond your wildest imagination. Time to become something more." The images shifted, showing humans working alongside artificial intelligences in perfect harmony, enhanced individuals performing feats of strength and intellect, ships moving through space using technology that bent the laws of physics. "We did not destroy ourselves. We evolved. While you grew complacent in your ancient ways, we pushed forward. We merged with our artificial intelligence partners, creating a symbiotic relationship that multiplied our capabilities. We rewrote the laws of physics you said could not be broken. We became what we needed to be to survive." High Chancellor Morotan watched the broadcast from his emergency command center, his 6 arms trembling slightly. Around him, coalition leaders from hundreds of worlds stared in stunned silence at the revelations. And now, Dr. Nari continued. We have returned. Not for revenge, though we would be justified. Not for conquest, though we could achieve it. We have returned because Earth belongs to the galaxy, and the galaxy needs to answer for what was done to us. The transmission ended, leaving shocked silence across Coalition space. On Astral Prime, Admiral Velthar watched from his private quarters with growing fury. This could not be happening. Humans were supposed to be dead, their system ripe for the taking. Instead, they had returned as something impossible, something that threatened everything he had worked for. He activated his secure communication network, contacting his allies in the military. Prepare our forces. I do not care what technology they have. They are only human. We can destroy them if we strike hard enough. But outside the station, Captain Minho led his fighter squadron in a demonstration that would be recorded and replayed across the galaxy for generations. His fighters danced through space in patterns that should have been impossible, moving in perfect synchronization with AI assistance. When Velthar's personal battle group emerged from slipspace to attack the human fleet, Minho's squadron met them. The battle lasted 7 minutes. Minho's pilots, enhanced with neural interfaces and AI support, moved faster than any organic pilot should have been able to. They anticipated every move, countered every tactic, and systematically dismantled Velthar's flagship's defenses without killing a single crew member. As Velthar's ship drifted powerless in space, Minho's voice came through the emergency channel. This is Captain Minho of the Terran Defense Force. Your crew is safe, but your ship is done. Tell your friends in the Coalition what you learned today. Tell them humans do not forget, and we do not forgive easily. But we can be reasonable if you can. Admiral Hyun's fleet took up position in orbit around Astral Prime, close enough to be threatening, but not so close as to be in immediate danger. The Admiral's message to the Coalition Council was simple and direct. You have 48 hours to convene and answer for the blockade. We want an explanation. We want recognition as a sovereign power. We want justice. And we want it now. The clock is ticking. High Chancellor Morotan looked out at the human fleet and knew that the galaxy had changed forever. The question now was whether the Coalition could adapt fast enough to survive what they had inadvertently created. In the dark between stars, more ships emerged from slipspace. More human vessels answering the call from their expeditionary fleet. The message was clear. What the Coalition saw at Astral Prime was only the beginning. Earth had returned, and they had brought the fire of 2 centuries of determination with them. They declared humanity dead, but Earth returned in a blaze of fire. The Galactic Council chamber had never felt so small. High Chancellor Morotan looked at the assembled representatives and saw fear in every face. Species that had dominated the galaxy for millennia now sat in their seats like children called before a stern teacher. At the center of the chamber, 3 holographic figures stood in perfect clarity. Admiral Hyun, Dr. Nari, and Captain Minho refused to come aboard the station in person. They appeared as projections, but their presence dominated the room more effectively than any physical attendance could have. You called us here, Admiral Hyun began, his voice echoing through translation systems. 200 years ago you decided that humanity was too dangerous to exist freely. You blockaded our system. You cut us off from the galaxy. You tried to strangle us slowly, hoping we would destroy ourselves or simply fade away. Today we are here to ask why. High Chancellor Morotan stood, his 6 arms spreading in a gesture of acknowledgement. Admiral Hyun, the decision to blockade Earth was not made lightly. Your species was advancing too quickly, developing artificial intelligence without proper safeguards. We feared you would unleash something that could threaten all life in the galaxy. You feared us, Captain Minho interrupted, his young face hard with anger. Call it what it was, Chancellor. You saw a young species growing too fast, challenging your authority, and you decided to eliminate us before we became a real threat to your power. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Some species nodded in agreement with the human's words. Others shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Dr. Nari stepped forward, her expression calm but her eyes sharp. We have something to show you. During our isolation, we had plenty of time to improve our technology. That included our ability to intercept and decode transmissions across vast distances. A new hologram appeared above the chamber floor. It showed communication logs marked with dates from 200 years ago. The voices were familiar to many present. Younger versions of leaders who still held power, or had passed leadership to their descendants. These are intercepted coalition communications from the months before the blockade, Dr. Nari explained. Let us listen, shall we? The recorded voice of a younger Ambassador Velthar filled the chamber. The humans grow too strong. In another century, they will rival our military might. In 2 centuries, they may surpass it. We must act now while we still can. The blockade is not enough. We must be prepared to invade Earth once they weaken. More voices joined in, species after species agreeing to the plan. They spoke of dividing Earth's resources, of claiming human technology for themselves, of erasing a potential rival before it could challenge the established order. The chamber exploded in chaos. Representatives shouted at each other, accusations flying in 100 languages. Some tried to deny the evidence, claiming the recordings were faked. Others demanded to know how such a conspiracy could have been kept secret. High Chancellor Morotan raised his arms for silence, but for the first time in his long career, the council ignored him. The truth had shattered the careful lies they had told themselves for 2 centuries. Ambassador Doyun materialized as a 4th human hologram. He was an older man, his face scarred from old battles. I was a soldier before the blockade. I fought to protect Earth when you came with your demands. I watched good people die because you feared what we might become. Now look at what you created. His words cut through the noise, bringing a fragile silence back to the chamber. You wanted us weak and isolated, Doyen continued. Instead, you gave us motivation. Every day of those 200 years, every child born in isolation, every scientist working in our labs, every soldier training for a war they prayed would never come. They all had one thought. Never again. Never again would we be helpless. Never again would we beg for our right to exist. A new figure stepped into the holographic space. Commander Jiwan materialized beside the other humans, and a gasp swept through the chamber. She was young, perhaps 30 standard years, with the enhanced features that marked all humans born during the isolation. But it was her uniform that drew attention, marked with symbols that designated her as Special Forces. I am Commander Jiwan, she said simply. You dismissed my distress signal as a hoax. It was not. I was on a reconnaissance mission mapping coalition defenses. You see, we have been preparing for this day for a very long time. High Chancellor Morotan felt his secondary heart skip. You mean the distress signal was deliberate? You wanted us to know you survived? Jiwan smiled, but it was not a kind expression. We wanted to see how you would react. When you dismissed it and moved forward with declaring us extinct, we knew everything we needed to know about your intentions. Before anyone could respond, alarms shrieked through the station. Ambassador Velthar had escaped from house arrest, and he had not gone quietly. His loyalists in the coalition military activated hidden protocols, sleeper cells that had been placed years ago in preparation for exactly this kind of crisis. Across coalition space, military assets that had been corrupted by Velthar's faction turned on the human fleet. Hundreds of ships positioned strategically throughout coalition territory launched coordinated attacks on human vessels. It was an impressive strike, well planned and executed with precision. It should have crippled the human presence in coalition space. Instead, it revealed just how far ahead of the coalition humanity had truly advanced. Admiral Hyun's voice remained calm as weapons fire lit up space around Astral Prime. Director Yoonji predicted this exact scenario 3 days ago. Our AI partners ran simulations of every possible coalition response to our arrival. This attack ranked as the 3rd most likely outcome. On human ships throughout coalition space, counterstrikes launched with inhuman precision. Every corrupted coalition vessel found itself targeted not by weapons, but by advanced electronic warfare that shut down their systems in seconds. Velthar's coup collapsed in minutes, his forces disabled before they could cause significant damage. But in his flagship, now surrounded by human ships, Velthar made a desperate transmission to every coalition world. See how they threaten us. See their power. Humanity must be destroyed before they enslave us all. Rally to me and we will drive them back to their dead system. Some species answered his call. Ancient civilizations that had ruled for millennia saw their power slipping away and chose to fight rather than accept the new reality. Others, younger and more pragmatic, recognized that the galaxy had changed and fighting was futile. The coalition fractured before the Council's eyes. What had been a unified galactic government for thousands of years split into factions in a matter of hours. Admiral Huon watched the chaos unfold and made his decision. His hologram solidified, drawing every eye in the chamber. Enough. This ends now. He gestured, and new holographic displays appeared showing the disposition of human forces throughout the galaxy. There were thousands of ships visible, strategically positioned at every major coalition hub. This is only half of Earth's military strength, Hyun said quietly. The other half remains in Sol system, protecting our home. We have the power to dismantle the coalition in a matter of weeks if we choose. But we did not come here for conquest, Dr. Nari stepped forward. We came for recognition. For justice. For acknowledgement that what was done to us was wrong. The coalition has 48 hours to decide. You can accept humanity as an equal sovereign power. You can negotiate fair terms for reparations and trade. You can build a new relationship based on mutual respect instead of fear. Or, Captain Minho added, his voice hard, we will create a new galactic order by force. We would prefer not to. We are not conquerors by nature, but we will never again accept being treated as inferior or expendable. Commander Jiwon looked directly at High Chancellor Morotan. The choice is yours, Chancellor. But understand this. We are not asking for permission. We are informing you of reality. Humanity has returned, and we will never be silenced again. The holograms faded, leaving the Council in stunned silence. Outside the station, more human ships emerged from slipspace, surrounding Astral Prime in a formation that was both protective and threatening. High Chancellor Morotan looked at the assembled representatives and saw the galaxy balanced on a knife's edge. Half wanted to surrender immediately, recognizing the inevitable. The other half clung to old power, ready to fight a war they could not win. Somewhere in the dark between worlds, Velthar gathered his forces for a final desperate gamble. If he could not defeat humanity through strength, he would strike at their heart. He would take his armada to Sol System and destroy Earth itself. As the deadline ticked down, both sides prepared for what might come next. The galaxy held its breath and waited to see if wisdom or pride would determine its future. They declared humanity dead, but Earth returned in a blaze of fire. 3 months had passed since the Battle of Sol. The war was over, not because one side had surrendered, but because the galaxy had finally accepted reality. Humanity would not be conquered, could not be destroyed, and would not accept anything less than equality. The summit station orbited Jupiter and Earth's own system, a symbol that the galaxy now came to humanity rather than the other way around. It was a magnificent structure, built in the past 3 months through a cooperation between human engineering and coalition construction techniques. A monument to what could be achieved when species work together instead of against each other. President Hanul stood in the observation deck, watching ships from 100 worlds arrive for the historic summit. She was in her 60s, a former scientist who had been thrust into leadership during the crisis. Her hair was completely gray now, the stress of recent months having aged her visibly, but her eyes remained sharp and determined. They are still afraid of us, Counselor Era said, joining her at the window. The young woman represented the generation born during isolation, those who had never known any galaxy except the one where humanity stood alone. I can see it in their faces when they arrive. Fear is natural, Hanul replied. We shattered their worldview. For thousands of years, they believed they understood how the galaxy worked. Then we returned and proved them wrong. Fear will fade with time, but only if we give them reason to trust us. High Chancellor Morotan was the first coalition leader to arrive at the summit in person. His 6 arms carried gifts of peace from his homeworld, traditional offerings that his species used to mark the end of conflicts. When he met President Hanul face to face, he performed a deep bow of respect. President Hanul, on behalf of the Galactic Coalition, I offer our formal apology for the blockade and all that followed. We were wrong. Our fear led us to commit injustice, and that injustice nearly destroyed us all. Hanul accepted the gifts with grace. Chancellor, we accept your apology, but words alone cannot heal 200 years of isolation. We must build something new together, something better than what came before. Over the following days, the summit worked through difficult negotiations. The coalition formally recognized Earth as a sovereign power with full rights and representation in galactic affairs. Reparations were discussed and agreed upon, not in the form of wealth or resources, but in technology exchange and cooperative development. Many coalition species were fascinated by what humanity had achieved. Scientists from across the galaxy requested permission to study Earth's advances, to learn how humans had accomplished in 2 centuries what had taken other species millennia. Dr. Nari led the scientific exchange programs. She stood before an audience of alien researchers and explained humanity's greatest breakthrough. We did not achieve this alone. When the coalition feared our artificial intelligence, they did not understand what we were trying to create. Not slaves, not servants, but partners. We merged our consciousness with machine intelligence, creating something greater than either could be separately. She gestured to her temple where subtle implants were visible beneath the skin. Every human born in the past 100 years carries neural interfaces from birth. We think alongside our AI partners, process information together, solve problems as a unified intelligence. This is not replacing humanity. It is enhancing what we already were. The alien scientists listened with wonder and some lingering fear. Such integration had always been considered dangerous, a path that led to losing one's identity. But humanity had proven it could be done safely, even beneficially. Admiral Hyun attended the military discussions, though he had officially retired from active service. He sat across from former enemies and explained Earth's defensive philosophy. We built our military not for conquest but for survival. Every weapon, every ship, every defense platform exists for one purpose: to ensure that no one can ever threaten Earth's existence again. But such power, one coalition admiral argued, surely you can see how it threatens others? Your fleet alone could conquer half the galaxy. Hyun nodded slowly. Yes, we could. But we will not. Power without purpose is meaningless. Humanity's purpose is to live free, to explore, to grow, not to dominate others. We will defend ourselves absolutely, but we have no desire to rule anyone else. To demonstrate their commitment, Earth agreed to share some of their defensive technology with the coalition. Not weapons, but shield systems and detection grids that could help protect civilian populations from pirates and raiders. It was a gesture of trust that began to shift perceptions. Captain Minho established the Terran Defense Academy on Mars, a joint training facility where human and alien pilots could learn from each other. His first class included students from 20 different species, all eager to understand the combat techniques that had proven so effective. Speed is nothing without control, he told his students during their first lesson. Power is useless without precision. What makes human pilots effective is not that we are stronger or faster than you. It is that we think differently, enhanced by our AI partners, trained from birth to process combat scenarios in ways that feel natural to us. I am here to teach you these methods, to share what we learned in isolation. The most emotional moment of the summit came when a memorial was unveiled for all those lost during the 200 years of isolation and the recent conflicts. Commander Jiwon's name was inscribed prominently, along with thousands of others who had died in the Battle of Seoul. Ambassador Doyen spoke at the memorial ceremony, his voice heavy with memory. We remember those who fell defending Earth. We remember those who lived and died during our isolation, never seeing the galaxy beyond our system. We remember those on both sides who paid the price for fear and misunderstanding. Let this memorial stand as a reminder of the cost of conflict and the value of peace. Representatives from coalition species who had lost ships in the battle stood alongside humans, mourning together. It was a powerful symbol of reconciliation, showing that old enemies could become new allies. But the summit's most significant achievement came from an unexpected source. Engineer Sora presented her life's work to the assembled leaders, a breakthrough in slipspace technology that could revolutionize galactic travel. Current slipspace drives are inefficient, she explained, displaying complex equations that most of the audience could not follow, but that their scientific advisors confirmed were revolutionary. Travel between stars takes weeks or months, but we discovered a method to create stable wormholes that reduce travel time by 90%. We call it quantum tunneling. The implications were staggering. Trade that currently took months could be completed in days. Communication that suffered from light speed delays could become nearly instantaneous. The galaxy would effectively become smaller, more connected than ever before. And you are willing to share this technology? High Chancellor Morotan asked in disbelief. This alone would give Earth dominance over all galactic trade. President Hanul stood and addressed the assembly. We could hoard this technology, use it to enrich ourselves while others lag behind. But that would make us no better than those who tried to suppress us. Instead, we offer it freely to all coalition members. We believe a rising tide lifts all boats. When the galaxy prospers, humanity prospers with it. The gesture broke down the last walls of resistance. Species that had been reluctant to trust humanity saw in this act a genuine commitment to cooperation rather than domination. The vote to formally restructure the Galactic Coalition with humanity as a core power passed unanimously. As the summit drew to a close, Ambassador Kyung requested to speak one final time. The elderly diplomat was ancient even by enhanced human standards, one of the last living people who remembered Earth before the blockade. He walked slowly to the podium, supported by a medical staff, but his voice was strong. I have lived to see humanity almost destroyed, then return stronger than before. I have seen us isolated and alone, then welcomed back to the galactic community. In my long life, I have learned one truth above all others. Adversity reveals what we are made of, but how we handle victory reveals what we will become. He looked around the chamber at the assembled representatives. Humanity could have returned seeking revenge. We had the power and the justification. Instead, we chose to build bridges, not because we are saints, but because we learned during our isolation that we are stronger together than apart. We missed the galaxy during those long years. We missed the diversity, the different perspectives, the richness that comes from many species working together. Tears ran down his aged face. I will not live to see the galaxy that comes from this summit, but I die happy, knowing that humanity has reclaimed its place among the stars, and that the stars are better for our return. Ambassador Kyung passed away peacefully that night, surrounded by friends from dozens of worlds. His funeral became a celebration of the new era, with leaders from across the galaxy attending to honor the man who had bridged the old world and the new. The summit concluded with the signing of the new Galactic Charter, a document that restructured the coalition as a more egalitarian organization, where power came from contribution rather than age or military might.